They called her broken. Her own father locked her in the wine cellar the night the Alpha King arrived. A plate shattered. Her blood ran too red. Why was hers the only blood in the pack that glowed? 300 wolves. One Omega hidden under the stairs. A king who had searched 5 years for a girl whose name no one would speak. An ancient council writ. A bloodline they tried to bury. He knelt. A king does not kneel. He looked at her bare feet on the cold floor and whispered, "I have been looking for you." Her hands shook. She did not let them see. Shattered glass. Howls across 3 states. A mother's secret. A grandmother's vow. A throne about to fall. A shadow rising from a 1,000-year grave. You were never broken. You were hidden. The fog came down off the ridge that October morning the way it always did in the Cascades. Slow. Patient. Like something waiting its turn. Ira Moonshadow had been awake since 4. The kitchen tiles were cold under her bare feet. The kettle had whistled once and gone silent. She hadn't started it again. 21 years old. 3 of them spent in the small room under the stairs. The one with the slanted ceiling. The one nobody else wanted. She remembered the night she'd been moved in there. The night after her 18th birthday. The night her body had tried to shift and failed. She didn't think about it often anymore. Or she tried not to. Outside the kitchen window, the sky was the color of dishwater. The pack house at Shadowmere sat in a hollow between 2 ridges in the Olympic Peninsula. Old growth on 3 sides. A creek behind the kitchen wing. A long gravel drive cutting down to the highway that wound toward Forks. 300 wolves in this pack. Most of them still asleep at 4 in the morning. Most of them didn't know her name. Or they knew it and chose not to use it. Her father called her. That one. She'd stopped flinching at the phrase 6 months ago. Mostly. She wiped down the long oak counter for the 2nd time. The wood had nicks in it from a century of knives. Her great-grandfather had carved the trestle table in the next room. Her grandmother said so. Her grandmother said a lot of things nobody else in the pack would say out loud. The back door opened with the wet groan it always made. Cold air came in. So did Garrick. 25 years old. 6'2". Enforcer rank since last spring. The kind of wolf who walked into rooms knowing he could break what was inside them. He didn't say good morning. He never did. He walked to the dish rack she'd just finished and ran one finger along the edge of the top plate. Then he picked it up, held it in the gray window light. His mouth pulled into something that wasn't quite a smile. You missed a spot, Mouse. Ira's hands had gone still in the soapy water without her telling them to. The plate fell. It didn't drop. He let it go. The sound of porcelain breaking is always bigger than the kitchen. Behind Garrick came the twins. Isolde first. 23. Hair the color of a wheat field in August, pulled back tight. The kind of pretty that hurts on purpose. Her brother Tristan a step behind. Same hair, same cheekbones, a different cruelty. Isolde clicked her tongue against her teeth. The sound a mother might make to a clumsy child. Oh, Mouse, again? Ira knelt. She had learned to kneel without looking at any of their faces. To keep her chin tucked. To make herself small without making herself smaller than she already was. There was an art to it. The largest shard of the plate had landed near Tristan's boot. He nudged it toward her with the tip of his shoe, slid it across the slate, made her reach. She reached. The edge caught the meat of her palm. Not the fleshy pad, the hollow, where the lifeline ran. She watched her own blood well up before she felt the cut. It was too red. She'd known this her whole life. The healers had remarked on it when she was 7 and again at 12. A wolf's blood ran darker than a human's. Hers ran lighter, brighter, almost the color of a poppy. She had been told this was another way she was wrong. She had been told a lot of ways she was wrong. The 3 of them did not move. They wanted to watch. Garrick crouched down to her level. Slow. The way men crouch when they want a small thing to feel smaller. You know what the funniest part is, Mouse? His breath smelled like the bacon someone else had made him for breakfast. Your father's going to ask me why we lost another plate. And I'm going to tell him. And he's going to take it out of your wages. A pause. Except you don't get wages, do you? Isolde laughed once. Sharp. Tristan didn't laugh. Tristan was the worse one. Tristan kept the silences. They left without sweeping the floor. They never swept the floor. The kitchen door opened a 2nd time before Ira had finished gathering the pieces. She didn't look up. She knew the footsteps. Her grandmother? 90-something. Nobody knew exactly. The bones in her face like river stones worn down by water. She moved the way old women move in places where age means something. Slow. Sure. Aud Alwyn knelt on the cold slate the way she had no business doing at 90. She took Ira's bleeding hand without asking. She had a folded square of linen in her apron pocket. She always did. Ira had never once seen her without it. She wrapped the cut, tucked the end, held the wrapped hand in both of her own for a moment. Her own skin was thin enough to see the blue underneath. He'll be here tonight. Era looked up for the first time. Her grandmother's eyes were not on her. They were on the kitchen window. On the gray, the Alpha King. The kitchen got very quiet. The Alpha King's convoy had been announced for the following Tuesday. Every wolf old enough to walk knew this. Her father had spent the past week arranging which daughters of which allied packs would stand in the front row. Era had heard him through the floorboards of his study. She had heard him say her name once and follow it with the word problem. Tonight, not next Tuesday. Tonight, her grandmother answered the question Era hadn't asked. Your father heard at sunrise. The king is moving in secret. He'll be here by dark. The presentation will happen tonight in the Great Hall. Every unmated wolf is required to stand. Era's mouth had gone dry. Including me, officially. Yes, unofficially. Your father is already discussing the wine cellar with Garrick's father. He plans to put you down there for the evening, with a cup of broth and a candle. So he can tell the king that his Omega daughter is, unfortunately, indisposed. Era pulled her wrapped hand back without meaning to. She held it against her chest, the way you'd hold something you'd been told you couldn't keep. Then, I'll go down there. Her grandmother looked at her, finally looked. The look took the air out of the room. No, you won't, she stood up. Slowly, one palm flat on the counter for balance. She crossed to the back stairs that led up to the bedrooms. She paused at the bottom of them. Come upstairs in 5 minutes. Don't speak to anyone on the way. Then she was gone. Era sat on the kitchen floor with broken porcelain in her lap and her own blood seeping through the linen, and she had no idea what was happening to her morning, or to her life. She got up. She finished the dishes. The cut throbbed under the wrap. She did the dishes anyway. Because there was a part of her, a deep, careful, almost vicious part, that did not want anyone to walk into this kitchen and find work undone. Not because she cared about the work. Because she was not going to give them another reason. She had decided that at 16 and she had not unmade the decision. She climbed the back stairs. She did not pass anyone. The pack house was still mostly asleep. Her grandmother's room was at the end of the south hall. The smallest room on the upper floor. Alwyn had chosen it. She said it caught the morning light. She had been here longer than the building had been here. Era didn't know how that was possible, but she had stopped asking. When Era opened the door, her grandmother was standing at the foot of the narrow bed. There was a wooden box on the quilt, carved at the corners. Old. The kind of old that smelled like cedar even when you weren't holding it. Era had not seen this box before. Sit, she sat on the rag rug. Her grandmother eased down into the rocking chair across from her. The chair creaked. The light in the window was the color of milk going slowly into tea. Alwyn opened the box. She took out 2 things. The first was a dress, pale blue. The blue of glacier melt. The hem was a little frayed where it had been folded too long. It was a summer dress, plain. The cut of it was older than what the younger women in the pack wore now. Era knew without being told whose dress it was. Her mother's. Mela, dead these last 6 years. The second thing was a small glass vial, stoppered with cork. The liquid inside was the color of a knife blade. Her grandmother set both items between them on the rug. You will wear the dress tonight. You will drink the vial before you walk down to the Great Hall. You will not eat any food after sundown. You will say nothing to your father when he tries to send you to the cellar. You will simply go down to the hall and take the last position in the Omega line. You understand me? No, that's fine. You don't need to. You just need to do it. Era touched the dress. The fabric was thin between her fingers. There was a faint pressed flower stain near the hem. Lavender. Her mother had pressed lavender into the hems of summer dresses. Era had forgotten that until this moment. Grandmother, if the king comes tonight, if he sees me, he's going to know what I am, what everyone in this pack knows. That I'm... Don't say it. Era stopped. Alwyn leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. Her voice was lower now. Lower than the kitchen voice. Lower than the public voice she used when there might be ears in the hall. Listen to me, granddaughter. There are things I have not been free to tell you. There is a reason for that. Tonight, some of those reasons end. Tomorrow, some of them will begin to be explained. But tonight, all I'm asking of you is to wear the dress and drink the draft and walk into that hall. Even if your father puts a hand on your shoulder, even if he tells you to go to the cellar, even if Garrick stands at the door, you walk through, you take your place. You keep your eyes on the floor. You breathe. A pause. I have been waiting for this night for 21 years. The number went through Era like a wire pulled tight. 21 years. Yes, why? Her grandmother folded her hands. Because your mother asked me to. That answer should have made Era cry. It didn't. Crying had become a thing that happened to her later, in private, in the small hours. Never when she needed it most. What she felt instead was a kind of stillness. The kind that comes in a room when something heavy is about to be set down. She picked up the vial, held it up to the gray light. The liquid inside moved like mercury. What is it? Moon mint and silver sage, steeped under 3 full moons. Bottled at a temperature I will not bore you with. What does it do? Her grandmother looked at her a long moment. It queets your wolf. So that when she wakes up tonight, and she will wake up tonight, she doesn't tear out of you before you have a chance to understand what is happening. Era's fingers tightened on the vial. Her wolf had not been quiet for years. Her wolf had been a kind of agony. A presence under her ribs that scraped and clawed and never broke through. The healers had told her she had a broken wolf, a malformed one. The kind that would never come fully out. The kind that hurt because it was wrong. Her grandmother had just told her, without telling her, that the healers had been mistaken. She did not know what to do with that information. She set the vial down. She picked up the dress instead. The fabric crumpled in her hand like an old letter. Her grandmother watched her. Your mother wore that the night she met your father. And what did she do after that? She made a choice. What choice? Alwyn smiled. The smile was not kind. It was not unkind. It was something else. The kind of smile a woman gets after 80 years of knowing things she cannot say. You'll learn the shape of it tonight, child. The full of it in time, she stood. The conversation was finished. Her grandmother had a way of ending conversations that made them stay ended. Era folded the dress over her arm. She tucked the vial into the inside pocket of her work apron. At the door, her grandmother stopped her. One more thing, if anyone asks. The dress was a gift. It is not your mother's. Tell them it was given to you by a cousin in another pack. Do not say her name out loud tonight. Not until I tell you it is safe to. Era nodded. She went back down the stairs. The day moved the way days move when something is coming. Slowly at first, then all at once. By 10 the front lawn was a circus. Florists came in white vans up the gravel drive. Wolves who had been raised never to lift anything heavier than a fork now hauled tables and lengths of dark blue cloth. A delegation arrived from the Greywater pack out of the Snake River Basin. Then one from the Cypress Bend pack out of northern Louisiana that had driven 3 days. Unmated daughters of allied alphas, all of them in traveling clothes, with cases of dresses zipped up in canvas. Every one of them was pretty. Every one of them had a wolf that worked. By noon, the great hall had been transformed. Banners hung from the high beams. Shadowmere brown and gold. Nightbane midnight and silver. The 2 colors looked wrong next to each other to Era, the way 2 perfumes can be lovely on their own and ugly together. By 2, she'd been in and out of the kitchen 6 times carrying trays. Nobody met her eyes. Not a single one of the visiting wolves. They had been told who she was. Word travels. Era heard a girl from the Cypress Bend delegation lean across to a girl from Greywater and whisper very quietly, "Is that her, the broken one?" The Greywater girl had answered, "Don't look at her, it's rude." That had been the kindest sentence anyone had spoken about her in months, and it had been an instruction to look away. By 4, the sun was already low. October in the Cascades was like that. Light went thin and slanted, and then it was just gone. Era slipped up the back stairs while the kitchen was full of caterers. She closed the door of her small room under the eaves. She undid the wrap on her hand. The cut had stopped bleeding. The skin around it was pinker than it had any right to be. She pressed the linen to it again and tied a fresh knot. She unbuttoned her work shirt. She lifted the blue dress over her head. It fit. It should not have fit. Her mother had been taller, wider in the shoulders. The dress sat on Era's frame like it had been cut for her. The hem brushed the tops of her ankles. The sleeves stopped just above her elbows. The lavender stain near the hem was the only thing that said the dress had ever been worn at all. She looked at the cracked mirror on the back of the door. She did not recognize herself. This was not a sentimental thought. The girl in the mirror had a face Era had not seen before. The cheekbones were sharper in this light. The line of her jaw was clean. Her hair, which she had not done anything to, looked like it had decided to be something on its own. She was not pretty in the way the Greywater girls were pretty. She was not pretty in any way the pack had taught her to value. But the girl in the mirror was not the kitchen girl. She did not know who the girl in the mirror was. She uncorked the vial. She drank it in one swallow. The taste was mint and metal. It coated the back of her tongue and stayed. For a long second she felt nothing. Then she felt her wolf settle. For the first time in 3 years, The constant scraping under her ribs went quiet. It was the silence after a faucet you didn't know was running gets turned off. She was so used to the noise she had forgotten what it had cost her to live inside of it. She sat down on the edge of her cot. She put her head in her hands. She did not cry. A knock at her door brought her back. She knew the knock. Her father's house steward. The old man's voice came through the wood, polite and careful, the way it always was when he had been told to say something he did not want to say. "Miss Era, your father requests that you remain in your quarters this evening. He says he will send a plate up at 8. Era sat very still. She had spent a long time being a girl who said yes to that voice. She had spent a long time being a girl who said yes to a lot of voices. She stood up. She smoothed the front of the blue dress with both hands. "Tell him I'll come down." A silence on the other side of the door. "Miss Era, tell him I will come down. I will take my place. He doesn't need to send a plate." A longer silence. "Yes, miss." The footsteps went away. She sat on the edge of the cot for what felt like a long time. The light in the small window over her bed went from gray to dim to gone. Somewhere on the floor below, someone was tuning the old upright piano in the great hall. A few notes, a pause, a few more notes, then it began. She knew it was beginning because the whole pack house went silent at once. 300 wolves and not a footstep. Even the children had been told. She had not understood until that moment how a building of this size could go that quiet. Like the place itself was holding its breath. She stood. She walked to the door. She put her hand on the knob. She stopped. She did not know how to do this. There were no instructions for being the girl who walks down the back stairs in her mother's blue dress to stand in a room she has been forbidden from her whole life. She walked anyway. The hallway was empty. The grand staircase was empty. Every wolf in the building had gathered in the great hall. She came down the staircase in stockinged feet because she had forgotten her shoes and she did not go back for them. The wood was cold. The chandelier overhead had been lit. The light fell down the stairs in long honey-colored bars. The doors to the great hall were closed. 2 of her father's enforcers stood outside them. One of them was Garrick. He saw her on the stairs. His face did something. His face went through several things and arrived at the wrong one. He stepped in front of the doors. "You're supposed to be upstairs." "I'm not." "You don't get to be down here, Mouse." The other enforcer, an older man with gray at his temples whose name Era had never bothered to learn, put a hand on Garrick's arm. He had seen something Garrick had not. He had been looking at her face. Or he had been looking at the dress. "Let her in. She's not on the list." The Alpha said, "Let her in now." Before the king looks up, Garrick stepped aside, not happily. The other enforcer opened the door. The great hall was full. Every visiting delegation, every Shadowmere wolf old enough to stand. The Alphas in the front, in their best coats, the Betas behind them, the Deltas and Gammas behind those, and at the very back, where the Omegas would have stood if Shadowmere had any other Omegas, there was a single empty space. Era walked to it. The room saw her go. She felt it the way you feel weather change. A long ripple, a turn of heads, a held-in breath from the women in the front row in their good dresses. A small sound from her father's section that might have been a curse. She kept her eyes on the floor. She took her place at the back. The temperature in the room dropped. Not by a few degrees, by 10. Maybe 12. It was the kind of cold you feel in your teeth, the kind that announces that something is in the building that was not in the building a minute ago. Power came through the front doors before the body did. It rolled across the floor of the hall like a low tide. It pressed on the back of Era's neck. It pressed on the shoulders of every wolf in the room. Wolves began going to one knee, not because they wanted to. Because their knees did it, Era did not go down. Her body locked. Every muscle from her ankles to her jaw seized at once. She could not have moved if she had wanted to. She stood there in her mother's blue dress with her bare feet on the cold floor and watched the doors open. He came in alone. No retinue, no attendants, no crown, a long black coat, hair the color of wet ink. A walk that was not a walk so much as the absence of one. The way a thing moves when it is so heavy it bends the air around it. The king of the Northern Territories was 26 years old. Torrin Blackthorn. He moved up the center of the hall. He looked once, briefly, at the front row where the daughters of the Cypress Bend and Greywater Alphas had been arranged like a wedding cake. He looked at them the way a man looks at furniture in a house he is renting. Not unkind, not interested. He kept walking, past the Alphas, past the Betas, past the Deltas, past the Gammas. The hall was so quiet Era could hear his coat move against itself. He stopped at the very back, in front of her. He did not speak at first. She did not lift her eyes. She could see his boots, black, worn at the toe. the boots of a man who walked more than he rode. The silence stretched. Era's father got there fast. She heard him before she saw him, his footsteps coming up the side aisle, the tight half-panic in his voice that he had spent a lifetime not letting anyone hear. He arrived at her shoulder, breathing harder than a man his age should be breathing. "Your Majesty?" Hadrian's voice had a smile in it, the kind of smile that does not reach a face. "I am so sorry. There has been an error. This one is not part of the presentation. She is an Omega. Quite a malformed one. We were not going to subject you to." Quiet. Torrin Blackthorn had not raised his voice. He had not even turned his head. The word came out of him low and flat, and Hadrian Shadowmere went quiet, the way a man goes quiet when his throat has been closed from the outside. He stood there with his mouth half open and nothing came out of it. He could not speak. His own body would not let him. Around the room, every wolf with any sense lowered their eyes. They had just watched their alpha be silenced like a child by a man 20 years younger than him. Era heard the breath go out of the Cypress Bend daughters in the front row. The king's boots had not moved. After a moment, he spoke again. To her, "What is your name?" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted it to. Era, he let that sit, as if it was something he had been turning over in his mind for a long time, and had now, finally, been handed. Era what? Moonshadow? A long pause? "Look at me." She did not want to. She did it. His eyes were not the color the stories had said. The stories had said silver. They were not silver. They were the color of the inside of a bell, a worked metal. A color that had a sound to it. She did not look away. She had spent 21 years learning how to keep her eyes down. None of that training mattered in this moment. Her body had decided. His face did not move, but something in his face moved. Then he did the thing that broke the room. He did not bow. A king does not bow. He went to one knee, the right one. He set it down on the cold wood of the great hall of Shadowmere with the same care a man uses when he sets down a very old book. A noise went through the hall. Not a gasp. Something underneath a gasp. A held breath that broke into pieces. Era's father made a sound, a small one, the sound of a man whose plans had just walked out the front door. The king of the Northern Territories knelt in front of the Omega. His pack had hidden in a kitchen for 3 years, and he spoke just loud enough for her to hear him. "I have been looking for you for 5 years." Era did not know what her face was doing. She could feel something happening behind her ribs that had nothing to do with her wolf, and everything to do with her wolf. A slow pull. A long ache that had been there her whole life and only now had a direction. A voice in the back of her head said, very clearly, the word that Omegas were not supposed to think this loud or this fast. Mate. She did not say it. She did not think she could have if she'd tried. Torrin stood. The motion was smooth. He did not look at her father. He did not look at the room. He held out his hand. "Walk with me." She did not take the hand. She walked. He walked up beside her. The hall opened a path for them that nobody had been told to open. The Cypress Bend daughters did not look at her as she went past. The Greywater girls did. One of them, the youngest, had tears on her face. Era could not tell what kind of tears they were. Her father started to follow. The king did not turn. "You stay here, Hadrian Shadowmere. You will not leave this hall until I send for you." He said it the way a man might tell a dog to sit. Hadrian sat. The doors of the great hall closed behind them. The east wing of the pack house held 3 guest suites. The largest was called the Blue Moon Room because of the round window above its bed. The window had been cut from a single pane of leaded glass during the Hoover administration by a craftsman from Seattle who had never made another one. The room had been used twice in Era's lifetime. Once for an alpha from the Canadian Rockies who had come down to mediate a border dispute. Once for a healer who had come and gone in a night. Tonight the king of the Northern Territories went to the door and opened it for her himself. She stepped inside. He closed it behind them. She had not been alone with a man other than her father since she was 16. She had not been alone with this man ever in her life. She stood against the far wall because the far wall was the farthest from him she could get and still be in the room. The wood at her back was cold even through the dress. He did not come closer. He went to the window. He stood at it. He looked out at the dark. After a long time he spoke without turning. "Your grandmother gave you the draft." It was not a question. "Yes, moon mint and silver sage." Steeped under 3 full moons, she did not answer. She did not know how he knew. "How long has she been giving it to you?" "She gave it to me tonight. For the first time. For the first time you remember." She had not thought about that. He turned around. He did not look angry. He did not look kind. He looked like a man who had walked a long distance and arrived somewhere he had not expected to. "Era." The sound of her name in his voice did something to her chest that the room was not big enough for. I am going to tell you a thing now. You will not believe me when I tell you. That is acceptable. You will believe me by morning. She waited. He crossed the room. Not fast. He stopped a few feet from her. He did not reach for her. He did not lift his hand. The wolf inside of you is not broken. The wolf inside of you is the most powerful animal that has walked this continent in 300 years. She heard the words. She did not let them in. Your mother knew this. Your grandmother knew this. They built a cage around it before you ever drew breath. They kept it caged because if they had not, men in long coats would have come for you when you were a child. Some of those men are still alive. Some of them are friends of your father. He paused. I've spent 5 years looking for the cage. I had a name. I had a description my own grandmother whispered to me when I was 9. I did not know what country I would find you in. I did not know if you were still alive. He took one step closer. He did not touch her. But he raised one hand slowly and held it close to the side of her neck. The place where, between two wolves, a mate's mark would go. He did not put his hand on her skin. He let it hover there in the air a half-inch above her pulse, and she felt the heat of it like a small fire she was being warned not to fall into. His voice when he spoke was so quiet she had to lean in to hear it. Tonight, Era Moonshadow. Tonight I am going to open the cage. The interruption came as a knock. 3 knocks, to be exact. Polite and measured and impossible to ignore. Braun's voice on the other side of the door was the voice of a man who had been a beta for 10 years and knew exactly how long he was allowed to wait before knocking again. Your Majesty, the dinner has been served. Alpha Hadrian is asking when you intend to come down. Torin did not move his hand from where it hovered near her throat. He did not lower it. He looked at her instead. He was waiting for something. She did not know what. Her voice when she found it sounded like someone else's. He's expecting you. Yes, you should go. We should go. She shook her head once. I'm not supposed to be at that table you are now. A small noise came up out of her chest. Not a laugh. Something that wanted to be a laugh and could not get there. He stepped back from her. He lowered his hand. He went to the door without looking at her again and pulled it open. Braun's eyes flicked once over Torin's shoulder, found her against the wall in her mother's blue dress with her bare feet on the cold floor, and Braun's face did exactly nothing. The man had spent 10 years learning how to do exactly nothing with his face. Find her shoes, sir? Find her something. She does not walk down to that dining room barefoot. And tell the Alpha that his Omega daughter is seated at my right. Braun did not blink. Yes, sir. A pair of slippers arrived 3 minutes later. Soft, gray, worn at the heels but clean. She did not ask whose they were. She put them on. They almost fit. She walked down the corridor beside the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. She did not take his arm. He did not offer it. There was a foot of air between them, and the air felt loaded. Her wolf was awake under the moon mint, not pacing, listening, watching him through her ribs, the way a cat watches a bird through a window. The dining room had been arranged for 60. There were 60 seats. There were now 61 people. The seat at the king's right hand had been arranged with a daughter of the Cyprus Bend delegation. A girl Era had served bread to that afternoon. The girl had not thanked her. Torin entered the room. The room rose. 60 bodies on their feet. 60 chairs scraped back at once. He walked the length of the long table. He stopped behind the chair to his right. He looked at the Cyprus Bend daughter who was sitting in it. The girl looked up. She had been beautiful at 4 in the afternoon. She was somehow less so now. She moved. She moved fast. Her face went the color of new brick on the way to the chair her mother had vacated farther down the table. And her mother's face when she sat down beside her was the face of a woman who had bet a very expensive horse on the wrong race. Era sat in the empty seat. She sat in it the way you sit in a chair you do not believe you are allowed to be in. On the edge, with both feet flat, her hands in her lap. Torin sat beside her. He did not look at her. He looked at the long table. He looked at Hadrian Shadowmere. At the far end of it, the dinner was beautiful. Roast venison. A wild rice from somewhere in northern Minnesota. Squash from the pack's own gardens. A wine that had come up from a cellar 2 of the visiting alphas had been talking about all afternoon. None of it tasted like anything to Era. Her mouth had gone too dry to taste. The conversation around the table began, slowly, the way conversation begins at a funeral. Then it picked up, voices remembering how to be voices. Across the table, a girl she had known her whole life leaned forward. Isolde Shadowmere, twin to Tristan. Cruel in the precise surgical way that some women learn to be cruel when they have been taught from childhood that their face is a weapon, Isolde had not been put at the high table by accident. She was the closest thing the Shadowmere pack had to a daughter worth presenting, now that Era's younger sister Aurora had been mated off 2 years ago to a beta in a pack outside of Bozeman. Isolde smiled at Torin. Her smile was the smile she used in the hallway with men twice her age. Your Majesty, I have to confess, I'm so glad to see you take such an interest in our Era. She's always been very special to us. Era did not lift her eyes from the venison. The fork in Torin's hand stilled. Has she, of course? We've all looked after her. She's our pack's gentlest soul. How gentle of you. The shift in his voice was so small that most of the people at the table did not catch it. Isolde did not catch it. She kept going. It's just so sweet, really. The way you noticed her. She doesn't get a lot of attention, poor thing. He took a sip of wine. He set Leska down. He turned his head, very slowly, and looked at her. Tell me about this morning. Isolde's smile dimmed a quarter inch. This morning, in the kitchen. You came in with your brother and Garrick. You watched him drop a plate so that Era would kneel down and pick up the pieces. Tristan kicked a shard across the floor toward her so she would cut her hand. Then the three of you left. The room had quieted. Not on purpose. The wolves nearest the high table had heard the king's voice change. The quiet rolled outward from the high table the way a stone's wake rolls outward on a pond. Isolde's face was still set in a smile. Her eyes had gone somewhere else, Your Majesty. I'm not sure who told you that, but it isn't. Last week, you poured wolfsbane extract into her wash water. You wanted to see how badly her skin would burn. It burned. She didn't say anything to anyone. She washed in a stream for 3 days. He turned to Tristan now. Tristan was 4 seats down. Tristan had stopped chewing. You, in April. You followed her to the creek behind the kitchen. You shoved her in. The water was 38 degrees. You stood on the bank and watched her try to climb out. You let her get to the top before you put your foot on her hand. He turned to Garrick at the foot of the table. In June. You backed her into the pantry. You put your hand on her throat. You told her if she ever spoke about it, she would not see another moon. She has not spoken about it. Not to anyone in this pack. Not even to her grandmother. The room was now so silent that a fork dropped 2 seats away sounded like a gunshot. Era had stopped breathing. She could feel the blood going out of her face. She had not told a single living soul about the pantry. She had not even told the cut on her hand. Torin set his wineglass down. He kept his voice conversational. My scouts have been here for 6 months. 2 of them work in the kitchen. 1 of them tends the horses. 1 of them stands at the front gate. I have been receiving weekly reports since the first week of April. I know the names of every wolf at this table who has put hands on her. I know the names of the ones who watched. And I know the names of the ones who looked away. He paused. He looked down at the end of the table. Hadrian, I want to ask you a question. In April, when your daughter came to dinner with her lips split open, and you told her at this very table not to embarrass the pack with her clumsiness, did you know who had done it? Hadrian Shadowmere had been sitting very still for the last 2 minutes. His hand around the stem of his wineglass was white at the knuckles. He did not answer. That was not a rhetorical question, Alpha. I asked you a question and I am waiting for the answer. The answer came out of Hadrian like air going out of something punctured. I knew. The visiting alphas at the table had stopped pretending to eat. The mother of the Cypress Bend daughter was looking at her plate as if she had never seen one before. The Greywater Alpha had his eyes closed. Torin turned back to his food. He picked up his fork. He cut a piece of venison. He chewed it. He swallowed. Then he said the sentence that everyone at the high table would remember for the rest of their lives, in the same easy tone in which a man comments on the weather. A pack that eats its own omegas is not a pack. It is a slaughterhouse with banners. He set the fork down. I am leaving with her tonight. Era's hand on the napkin in her lap had begun to shake. She could not make it stop. She put her other hand on top of it. Hadrian had risen halfway out of his chair without realizing it. He was a man who had been an alpha for 22 years, and he had no script for this. None of his fathers had a script for this, Your Majesty. With respect, you cannot just, I can, I will. The only question is whether you make me do it the easy way or the way that costs you the pack house. She's my daughter. She is my mate. The word went down the long table like a struck match laid against gasoline. There was a sound from the visiting wolves, a scrape of breath, a few small exclamations cut off before they finished. The Greywater Alpha opened his eyes. He looked at Torin. Then he looked at Ira. Then he closed his eyes again, more slowly. The way a man closes them when he has just understood something about the next 10 years of his life. Era could not feel her hands. Mate. He had said the word out loud in a room of 60 wolves. To her father, her wolf, under the moonmint, sat up. Torin turned his head. He looked at her. The room around them got farther away for a moment, like the walls had stepped back a foot. Era, yes, you don't have to answer in front of them. But I am going to ask you anyway. Will you come with me tonight? She did not look at her father. She did not look at Isolde. She did not look at the Cypress Bend daughter who had moved out of her chair. She looked at the man who had knelt on the floor of her great hall an hour earlier and told her he had been looking for her for 5 years. Her voice was small. It was clear, yes. His face did not change. But something in his shoulders eased that she had not understood was tight. He stood up. He held out his hand. She took it this time. Father stood up too. His face had gone the color of clay. You take one step out of this house with her, Blackthorn, and I will call every alpha in the territory. Call them. They'll come for her. They'll lose. Hadrian's mouth opened and closed. She's broken. You know it. You'll regret this in a month. Torin did not look at him. He was already walking. Era walked beside him. He paused at the threshold of the dining room. He turned back, only for a moment, only to speak to Hadrian. You did not lose her tonight. You lost her the day she stopped trusting you. Tonight is only when the paperwork catches up. Then they were in the hallway. The dining room door closed behind them. The hallway opened onto the back terrace. The terrace led to the garden. The garden was where her mother had once grown lavender. The lavender was still there, half wild now, knee-high, smelling of October. The moon was full. She had not noticed that when she'd come down the stairs. The moon was full and it was very bright. The light on the gravel paths was almost the color of milk. He let go of her hand at the top of the garden steps. She wrapped her arms around herself because the night air was cold and she was still in summer cotton. He took off his coat and put it around her shoulders. It was heavier than she'd expected. It smelled like pine and wood smoke and something else. Something old. Something that her wolf, beneath the draft, recognized at a level her mind could not get to. They walked the gravel path together. The garden ended at a stone wall. He stopped there. He turned to face her. She got the question out before he did. Why did you come here tonight? To find you. How did you know I was here? He was quiet for a moment. I didn't. Not exactly. I had a list. There were 11 packs left that I had not yet visited. Yours was the 9th. I would have been here in 3 weeks even if I hadn't gotten the message from your grandmother. She turned her head sharply. My grandmother, she wrote to me 4 months ago. Through a runner who works at the eastern border. The note was 3 lines. A pause. It said, she is 21, the cage is fraying, come before the next moon. The world made a small click in Era's head, as if a piece of a puzzle she had not known she was building had just slotted into place. How long has she known you were looking for someone like me? All her life. She and my grandmother were friends long before either of them had grandchildren. Your grandmother's sister and my grandmother stood at the same fire on the same night 67 years ago and made each other a promise. The promise was that if either of them ever had a girl child who carried the old blood, the other one would protect her. Era's mouth was dry. What is the old blood? Tell me. Plainly, he looked at the moon for a moment. He looked back at her. There is a line of wolves that was almost wiped out by the Council of Alphas 300 years ago. The council called them dangerous. They called themselves moon-blessed. They could see truth through any lie. They could phase through walls when the moon was full. They could run on light. Most of all, they could not be ruled. The council does not like liking things that cannot be ruled. She had a hand pressed flat against her own sternum without knowing when she had put it there. My mother, your mother was the last of them in our records. We thought she had died without issue. The council believed it. My grandmother whispered to me before she passed that they were wrong, that there was a child, me, you. How did my mother hide it? A new voice answered. From the path behind them. By killing herself slowly enough that no one noticed she was dying. Era turned. Her grandmother had come up the gravel path behind them. She had walked all the way out here in her good shawl. She had a small leather book in her hands. Era recognized the binding the way you recognize a face you have seen in a dream but cannot place. The book had been on her mother's writing desk. The desk had been in her mother's bedroom. Era had been told the desk had been sold after the funeral. The desk had not been sold. The book had been kept. Alwyn came to the stone wall. She set the book down on it. It is time. Granddaughter, sit. There was a bench near the wall. Era sat. Her grandmother sat beside her. Torin stayed standing. A few paces away, his arms loose at his sides. He did not look at the book. He looked at the moon. Alwyn opened the book to a marked page. I am not going to read all of it. I do not need to. I need you to know 3 things. The first is that your mother was 24 when she knew you would be moon blessed. She did not need a midwife to tell her. She felt you turn inside of her one night and she knew Era's hands had gone cold inside the coat. The second, when you were 6. A man came up the drive in a long black car. He told your father he was from a foundation that studied unusual children. He asked to interview you. Your father said no because your mother had told him to say no, and your father at that time still listened to your mother. The man went away. He did not come back. We learned later that he had been a scout for the council. He had gone home and reported that you were unremarkable. The next sentence did not come right away. Her grandmother turned a page. The third. When you were 12. 2 of your mother's cousins out in the Blue Ridge were killed in their sleep. The killings were made to look like a rogue attack. We knew better. There were 3 moon blessed left in the country at that point that we knew of. By the time you were 13, there was 1. Your mother, Alwyn closed the book. When you were 15, your mother understood she had 2 or 3 years before the council would come looking. She also understood you were going to be stronger than she was. She made a choice. The choice had a name. It was called the soul binding. It is not a ritual we discuss. It is not taught. It is only ever done once in a wolf's lifetime. By definition, Era had stopped breathing. What did she do? She put her own wolf around yours like a coat. She bound her life force to the cage. So long as your wolf stayed inside, her power was being used to hold the door closed. So long as the door stayed closed, no scout would find you. The council does not hunt broken omegas. The council hunts strong wolves. Her grandmother's voice did not shake. It did not soften. She delivered the next sentence the way she would have delivered the time of day. It killed her. Slowly, over the next year. She knew it would. She did it anyway. She did not die of an illness, child. She died because she chose to. Era sat there in her mother's blue dress, with the king's coat on her shoulders, and the words went through her in a way that did not have anywhere to land. 6 years she had carried a story about her mother that was not the story. 6 years of telling herself her mother had died ashamed of her. 6 years of believing that her body, malformed and broken, had been the last thing her mother saw and the reason her mother stopped wanting to live. The truth was the opposite. The truth was so opposite that for a long moment her mind would not let it in. It bounced off of her like sun off a window. Her grandmother watched her. Her grandmother did not reach for her hand. Her grandmother had decided long ago that this moment would belong to Era alone, and that comfort offered too early would only get in the way of the door coming open. When Era finally spoke, her voice did not sound like her own. She let me hate her, yes. For 6 years, she knew you would. She told me you would. She told me to keep my mouth shut until you found your mate. She made me swear. I swore. She knew about him. Alwyn glanced at Torin where he stood. He had not moved. He had given them the moon and the wall and his coat and the space to do this in. She had seen him. In a dream a year before she died. She did not see his face. She saw a man kneel in the great hall of Shadowmere. She told me when I saw that I would know it was time. Era covered her face with both hands. She did not cry. Not yet. There was no room in her chest for it yet. Her chest was full of something else. A pressure, a heat. A door she had spent her whole life believing was a wall. She felt the door start to move. Under the moon mint, her wolf began to stir. Not violent, not frantic. Awake, awake the way a thing is awake when it has heard its own name spoken aloud for the first time. The pressure built. It built fast. It built faster than she had words for. The draft was failing. She felt it the way you feel a dam fail. A small leak, then a wider one. Then a sound under her sternum like a beam giving way. Her hands came down from her face. She stood up off the bench without meaning to. Across the garden, Torin's head turned. His eyes had gone wide. He took a step toward her. He stopped himself. Era, it's coming. Don't fight it this time. Whatever you have done before. Don't do it this time. Let her out. She is not what you have been told. Let her out. She had been told her whole life that her shifts would be agony. They had been. 3 of them. Each one worse than the last. Each one a thing she had learned to be afraid of. Each one a kind of breaking that left her sobbing on the floor of a closet for hours afterward, bones in places they did not belong, fur in patches, skin too thin in some places and rough in others, a body the healers had refused to look at for long. She braced for it. She could not help bracing for it. 21 years of bracing did not undo itself in a single garden under a single moon, but the pain did not come. What came was different. What came was a long, quiet exhale she had not known her body had been holding. It went out of her the way smoke goes out of a chimney that has been blocked for a very long time and is suddenly clear. The shift was not a breaking. The shift was a remembering. Her bones moved. They knew where to go. Her spine lengthened. The dress fell from her shoulders. The king's coat slid off her back into the grass. Her skin was not skin anymore. What grew from it was not fur. It was something that caught the moonlight and held it. Each strand a thread of glass with light at the center of it. She came down on 4 paws in the gravel, and the gravel sang faintly under it. A note. Almost a chime. She looked down at herself. She was bigger than Torin's wolf would be. She knew this without having seen his wolf. Her wolf knew it for her. She lifted her head. The moon was directly overhead. The moon felt like a thing she could speak to. She did not howl. Not yet. She turned her head instead, and she looked at the man who had given up his coat for her. Torin had not moved. He was watching her with an expression she did not have a name for. It was not awe. Awe was too small a word. He went down, slowly, carefully. He shifted in a long, smooth motion that her wolf watched with great interest. Where Torin had been standing, a black wolf now stood. Larger than any she had seen in pictures. Black as the inside of a chimney. Eyes the color of the inside of a bell. He came forward. He stopped 3 paces from her. He went to his belly in the grass. He stretched his neck out long. He exposed his throat. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The man who had not bent his knee to another wolf since he was 13 years old, lay down in the lavender at her feet and offered her his life. Her wolf made a sound, not a howl. A low note. A note like a struck string. His voice came into her head. The mate bond was not finished. The mate bond should not have been able to carry anything yet. It carried this, my queen. Her own voice came back the way a voice comes back to you in a familiar room. Get up. He stood. He came to her side. He pressed his shoulder against hers. He was warm in a way that nothing else in her life had ever been warm. She lifted her head and she howled. The howl did not sound like her. It did not sound like any wolf. It sounded the way wind sounds when it crosses water on a still night. It sounded the way a bell sounds half a mile away. It went up out of the garden, and it went up out of the valley, and it went up over the ridges and out across the Olympic Peninsula and farther. The glass in the great hall behind them cracked. All of it. Every window. A long, high, splintering sound. The chandelier in the dining room came down on the table at an angle. None of the wolves in the dining room moved to stop it. They were all on the floor. The pack lay down, 300 of them, all at once. They did not decide to. Their bodies decided for them. Their bodies told them, very clearly, that something had just come into the valley that they did not have the right to stand in front of. The howl carried. It carried farther than it had any right to carry. Out past the ridges, past the highway, up into the mountains beyond, into a small cabin in the Sawtooth Range, where a woman who had been hiding for 15 years sat bolt upright in bed, down into a 1-room apartment above a hardware store in northern Vermont, where a young woman who had not known what she was woke, with her hand to her throat. Across into the Ozarks, where a girl of 19 pressed her face into her pillow and wept without knowing why. The howl went out, and the howl was answered. Era heard them, faintly, from a long way off. The way you hear other voices through a wall in a hotel when the room next to yours has the TV on. A voice from the east, a voice from the south, a voice from the high north. Sisters. Her wolf made the word into a sound, and the sound was not English, and it was not any language, but Era knew what it meant. Her grandmother was on her feet by the stone wall. She had a hand pressed flat against her own heart. Her face in the moonlight was wet. Era had never in her life seen her grandmother cry. Alwyn whispered to no one, to herself, the way old women whisper when a thing they have waited their whole life for has finally come. They answered. They answered. After all these years, the sound of running feet came from the pack house. The pack had begun to come to the garden. Hadrian was at the front of them. He was already shifting as he came down the steps. He came across the lavender on 4 legs. Behind him came 20 more. Garrick. Tristan. Half the enforcers. They came in a tight pack. They came with the intent of an army. They had not, in all of their lives, faced a thing they could not pull down. They stopped at the edge of the gravel path. They stopped because their bodies stopped. The Alpha of Shadowmere stood 12 feet from his own daughter, and he could not take another step toward her. His paws had locked, his back had bowed. He was the Alpha of 300 wolves, and her power was the kind of power that, simply by existing in a garden, made other power lie down. Torin stepped between them. He did not need to. He did it anyway. Era shifted back. She did not know how she did this. Her wolf simply chose to. She stood in the lavender in her mother's blue dress. The dress had come back to her along with her body. She had not known that could happen. She did not have time to wonder at it. She bent down and picked up the king's coat. She wrapped it around her shoulders because the air was cold and her wolf had spent her warmth. She stepped past Torin's wolf. She walked through the gravel toward her father's frozen form. She stopped 6 feet short of him. She did not raise her voice. "Shift back, father. I will not speak to you like this." He shifted. He came up on 2 legs. He had been a tall man once. He looked smaller now. He looked like a man wearing the body of a man who had used to be larger. He could not seem to find words. She found them for him. "You called me broken in front of the king. You called me You called me broken in front of yourself. Every day, for 6 years, ever since the night my body could not shift the way you needed it to. And you didn't know what you were calling broken. You didn't even know what was in the kitchen with you all those mornings." Her voice did not rise. It went steadier instead. It went somewhere it had never been before. "You hated Mom in the year before she died. I heard you hate her through the floor of your study. You said she was weak. You said she was making you look weak in front of the pack. You did not know she was killing herself to save your child. You did not know because she did not let you know. She did not let you know because she did not trust you with it. She was right not to." He flinched at that. The flinch was the first honest thing his face had done in 6 years. "I do not hate you, father. I do not have the energy to hate you. But I am leaving with him tonight. I am not coming back, and when I come back, it will not be as your daughter." She turned. She walked away. She did not look at the rest of them. She did not look at Isolde, who had come up behind the enforcers, half shifted and half not, her wolf form fighting her clothes. She did not look at Garrick, who was on his belly in the lavender, who had felt the howl in his teeth and could not stand back up. She did not look at Tristan, who had not even tried to shift, who was standing by the kitchen door with both hands at his throat. She walked past Torin's wolf. She put one hand on his shoulder as she passed. The fur there was warm. She felt him lean into the touch. She stopped at her grandmother. Alwyn was still by the stone wall. "Are you coming with me?" "I am. Tonight. I packed your bag yesterday afternoon. It is by the back door. There is a car waiting at the bottom of the drive. I sent Bronzeman down 2 hours ago to bring it up. We can leave whenever you are ready." Era looked at her for a long moment. The old woman in the moonlight looked exactly as she had always looked. Exactly as she had looked in the kitchen at 4 that morning, as if none of this had surprised her. "Grandmother?" "Yes, did you do this? Did you tell him to come tonight? I asked him to come before your 22nd birthday. I did not tell him to come tonight. The wolf in him brought him tonight. The wolf in him heard the wolf in you start to wake. It always knows. They know before we do." Era closed her eyes. When she opened them, Torin had shifted back. He was standing in the lavender in dark clothing he had not been wearing before. She did not ask where the clothing had come from. She did not have any energy left for small questions. He came up to her. He stopped a respectful distance away. 3 days. The drive to Nightbane is 3 days. We leave in an hour. Is there anything in the house you need? She thought about it. 2 things. My mother's box, the one under my bed, done, and the book my grandmother brought down tonight. Alwyn nodded once and slipped the leather book into the deep pocket of her shawl. Torin offered Era his arm. This time she took it. They walked back up the gravel path together. The pack parted for them without being told to. The pack had no choice. The pack lay in the lavender in the moonlight and watched the Omega they had bullied for 3 years walk past on the arm of the king. They were almost to the kitchen door when Bronn came out of it at a half run. His face was tight in a way Era had not seen on it before. He had a folded paper in his hand. The paper had a wax seal on it. The seal was red. He spoke before he reached them, sir. A rider just came up the drive. From the council, hand-delivered. I think you should read it before we go. Torin took the paper. He broke the seal. He read it once. He read it twice. His face, when he looked up, had gone still. Era watched him fold the paper back along its creases. He folded it the way you fold something you intend to keep. Tell me. Not here, tell me. He looked at her. He looked at Alwyn. He looked at the open kitchen door. The council has called an emergency tribunal. 7 days from tonight. They are invoking the ancient verification law. Every wolf of questioned bloodline is required to appear and submit to inspection. A pause. They have named you by name. Behind them, Alwyn made a sound. It was the smallest sound the old woman had made all night. It was the sound of a woman who had been waiting 80 years for a knock and had finally heard it. She crossed herself, slowly, the way the women of her line had been crossing themselves for 200 years. That is the writ they used to kill my sisters. That is the same writ. Word for word, Torrin's hand tightened on the paper. Era looked up at the moon. The moon was still full. The moon was still very bright. She heard herself speak. Her voice was steady in a way her hands were not. Then we go to them. Let them lay eyes on the last of the moon blessed, and let them see their own faces in the mirror she carries. The car was a long black SUV with tinted windows and tires that had been changed for snow somewhere in Idaho 3 weeks earlier. Braun drove. Torrin sat in the back beside Era. Alwyn rode in the second car behind them, with 2 of Torrin's scouts. The convoy left Shadowmere at 20 past midnight on a Tuesday in October. Era watched the gravel drive slide past the window until the drive became the highway, and the highway became the dark. She did not look back. She had been told once, by a teacher who had not lasted long in the Shadowmere school, that the women who looked back in the old stories never made it where they were going. She had not understood the lesson at the time. She understood it now. For the first hour, she did not speak. Neither did he. They sat in the back of the SUV with a foot of leather seat between them and the lights of the dashboard reflecting in the windshield. Braun drove the way a man drives when his cargo is the most valuable thing on the continent. Steady, below the speed limit by exactly 2 miles per hour. He did not turn on the radio. Torrin broke the silence first. He did it carefully. There is water in the door panel. If you want it, I'm not thirsty. There is also a blanket. If you are cold, I'm not cold. He let that sit. He looked out his own window. The blackness of the Cascade foothills moved past. After a long time, she asked the question, "Why did you kill your father?" It came out of her without warning. She did not know she had been going to ask it until she heard herself ask it. The shape of the question was wrong. The shape was too direct. The shape of it left no room for him to dress the answer up. He did not look at her when he answered. He kept his eyes on the dark out the window. His voice, when it came, was lower than she had heard it before. My father started seeing people in the corners of rooms when I was 11. He had a brother who had done the same thing. Then a cousin. There is a thread in our line. Not every generation. Often enough to know the look of it. By the time I was 12, my father had killed 2 of his own scouts because he thought they were reporting to the council. By 13, he had killed 3 more wolves of our own pack. I tried twice to get my mother to take me away. The first time, he caught us. He broke her wrist. The second time, she would not come. She did not interrupt. She had learned, sitting at her grandmother's kitchen table for 15 years, that when an old story came up out of a person you did not crowd it. I challenged him on a Tuesday morning in March. I had been training for 6 months in secret, with a man who had been my father's beta, and who had stopped being my father's beta the day my father took out the 3rd scout. I knew I was going to lose if it went past 4 minutes. I made it end. In 3, he paused. He had been my father. Until he was not anymore. The council. When they heard, called me a patricide, they held a vote on whether to remove me from succession. I won by 1. The wolf who broke the tie in my favor died 2 months later in what was called an accident. I do not believe it was an accident. She watched his profile in the dark, the line of his jaw, the set of his mouth. How old was he? When he started, my father? Yes, 44. Are you afraid that it will come for me? Yes. Every day. She did not know what made her do what she did next. She did not plan it. She reached across the foot of leather between them. She put her hand on top of his on the seat. She left it there. He did not move his hand. He did not move at all for a long moment. Then his thumb came up and traced the side of her wrist, very lightly, once. He did not look at her. You are the first person I have told that to outside my mother. Where is your mother? In a small house in the Adirondacks. She has been there since I took the throne. She will not come south. She told me she had used up all of her courage in one house and could not find any more for a second one. She thought about that. She thought about the woman she had not yet met, sitting in a small house in the woods of upstate New York. Having spent her courage, I would like to meet her. One day, she would like that, the hand under hers turned over, her palm settled into his fingers closed around hers. They stayed like that until the next state line. The first night they stopped at a roadhouse just east of Spokane that Torrin's people had quietly bought 5 years earlier through a shell company in Boise. The place looked from the outside like every other roadhouse in eastern Washington. A neon sign with 1 letter out, a gravel lot, a diner attached to a motel. Inside it was something else. The waitress at the counter was a wolf. So was the cook. So was the manager who came out from a back office to meet them and who bowed to Era before she even knew his name. She did not know what to do with the bow. She put her hand on the back of a bar stool because she was tired and she had not eaten, and the bowing made her dizzy, the manager brought them a plate of food in a back booth. Eggs, toast, a piece of trout that had been caught that morning. Era ate without tasting. Torin watched her eat. He did not eat himself until she had taken 3 bites. Then he ate quickly, the way a man eats who has spent half his life eating in the saddle. Alwyn sat across the booth from them. She did not eat either. She had a cup of tea between her hands. She watched the diner. There are 2 wolves outside in a truck. Torin glanced toward the window. Mine. I know they are yours. I am telling you they are there, so that you know I see them, and so that you know that if you ever want me not to see them, you will need to tell me before, not after. He inclined his head a 1/4 inch. It was, Era realized, a kind of agreement between them, the old woman and the young king. A working out of who would see what. Era looked between them, and the realization came to her quietly that her grandmother had been doing this kind of working out for 60 years. That she had grown up inside a quiet machinery of women who had watched men do harm and had learned how to watch men do good without trusting it. The second day they crossed into Montana. The land flattened out the way it always does east of the Rockies. Big sky, grass the color of straw, a 2-lane highway running through it like a seam. Braun drove the second leg too. He did not seem to tire. Era asked once if anyone else could spell him. Torin said no. Braun preferred to drive when the cargo mattered. Era understood that the cargo, in this case, was her. She rode in the back beside Torin for the second day too. They talked more on the second day. About small things at first, then about larger ones. He told her about Nightbane. About the obsidian his great-great-grandfather had quarried out of the mountain. About the falls behind the main hall that froze halfway down each January and refused to thaw before April. About the library his grandmother had started and his father had never read a book in, and his mother had read every book in twice. She told him about her mother's lavender. About the summer she was 8 when she had tried to braid the lavender into her sister Aurora's hair. And her sister had cried 'cause the smell made her sneeze. About the kitchen window above the sink that she had cleaned 1,000 times and had never looked out of because there was nothing to see but the wall of the next building. He told her about the first wolf he had ever fought who had been a friend. She told him about the first wolf who had ever told her she was not worth the air she was using. He told her he was sorry. She told him not to be. She told him that the wolf in question was now mated to a beta in northern Idaho, who had taken the last of her fire from her by the time she was 23. Around 4 in the afternoon, they crossed the Bitterroot. They stopped at an overlook so that Era could see the mountains. She had grown up surrounded by mountains. She had never stood at an overlook before. Her father had not been the kind of man to stop a car. She got out. She walked to the railing. The wind was cold and full of pine. The valley below was the color of new copper in the late sun. Torin came up beside her. He did not put his arm around her. He stood close enough that she could feel the warmth of him along her left side. When we come back this way, after everything, I will stop here again, she nodded once. I would like that. She did not say the rest of what she was thinking. She was thinking that there might not be a way to come back this way, that the writ in the inside pocket of his jacket had not gone away just because they had spent 2 days not talking about it. He knew she was thinking it. He did not press her. They drove on. The third day they came into Nightbane in the late afternoon. The road wound up through black stone and pine. The trees thinned. The mountain opened. Era had been told what to expect. She was not prepared for what she saw. Nightbane had been built out of the mountain itself. The face of the cliff had been cut and shaped over 6 generations into towers. The towers were black. Their windows caught the late sun and threw it back as small fires. A waterfall ran down between 2 of them and disappeared into a pool that the road skirted on its way up. The gates were the size of a barn. They were carved with the phases of the moon and inlaid with what looked, from a distance, like silver. She did not say anything. There was nothing to say. The gates opened as they approached. They opened slowly. Braun drove through them into a courtyard the size of a high school football field. The courtyard was full of wolves. She had not been prepared for that either. There must have been 400 of them. Standing, waiting. In neat lines that wrapped around 3 sides of the courtyard, children at the front, because the children had wanted to see. Elders behind them, because the elders had insisted on being seen. The fighting wolves at the back, because they would not have wanted to crowd her. The SUV came to a stop. Braun got out. He came around to open Torin's door. Torin got out first. He turned and offered Era his hand. She took it. She stepped down onto the obsidian flagstones in the slippers that did not quite fit her, and her mother's blue dress that had not been washed in 3 days. She did not look like a queen. She knew she did not look like a queen. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night since they had left Washington. Her hair had not been brushed since that morning. Her eyes had circles under them, dark enough to see from across a room. She did not look like a queen. The courtyard did not seem to mind. Every wolf in the courtyard went to one knee at the same moment. There was no signal, there was no command. They simply did it, 400 of them, the way a flock of birds turns at the same instant without anyone telling them to. Era's throat closed. She did not know what to say. She had never been welcomed anywhere in her life. She had not known what welcome looked like. Torin spoke before she had to. He spoke loud enough to carry across the courtyard. This is Era Moonshadow. She is my mate. She is your queen. She is also tired, and she is hungry. And she has slept in a car for 3 nights, so you are going to get up. And you are going to let her walk to the moon tower without being looked at. And you can welcome her properly tomorrow morning. At breakfast, a small ripple of laughter went through the courtyard. The wolves stood. They did not look at her as she walked past them. They had been instructed not to. They looked at the ground and at each other and at their feet. She felt them not looking. The not looking was its own kind of welcome. The moon tower was on the eastern face of the fortress. It was reached by a long staircase that wound up through the rock itself. Halfway up, there was a landing with a window. Era stopped at the window because her legs had decided to. She looked out. The view was the valley they had come up through. The road, the forest, the far mountains. She had spent 21 years looking out of windows at walls. She put her hand flat against the glass. She did not cry. She had not cried yet through any of this. She thought she might be done crying for a while. Torin stood behind her on the landing. He did not push her up the rest of the stairs. He waited. After a long moment, she said, very quietly, I do not know who I am supposed to be in this place. You do not have to know yet. They knelt to me. 400 of them, they will keep kneeling, until you tell them to stop. Then they will stop, and they will love you instead. That is the harder part. The kneeling is easy. The loving you takes work. They will do it. You will let them. It will be uncomfortable for a while. She turned to look at him. How long until I stop feeling like an imposter? A year. Maybe 2. You speak as if you know. I do know. She thought about that. She climbed the rest of the stairs. The moon tower opened into a single round room at the top. The ceiling was glass. The bed was set in the center of the floor under the glass so that whoever slept in it slept under the sky. The walls were bookshelves. They had been filled. She walked the perimeter of the room, running her fingers along the spines of books. Some of them in English. Some of them in Latin. Some of them in older alphabets she did not recognize. A whole shelf of journals bound in green leather that her grandmother, who had come up behind her, identified without being asked. Your mother's people. Going back 6 generations. I shipped the journals out of a vault in the Berkshires a year ago. They have been waiting here for you? Era touched one of the green spines. She did not pull it down, she would. Just not yet. She turned. She looked at the bed. She looked at the writing desk by the south window. She looked at the small fireplace. She looked at Torin standing in the doorway with his coat over one arm. She said, Is this mine? It is yours, and where is yours? My chambers are 3 towers over. You may visit them whenever you like. I will not enter this tower without your invitation. Not tonight, not in a week, not ever unless you ask me to. That seems like an unnecessary rule. It is not for you. It is for me. So that I do not become a man my father was. I will keep the rule until you tell me I do not have to. Something in her chest went tight in a new way. She had not known a man could draw that kind of line and stand on his own side of it. She had not known any of the men in her life to draw any lines at all. She slept 12 hours that night. The bed was the softest thing her body had ever lain in. She woke at mid-morning to the smell of bread coming up the staircase from a kitchen 6 floors below. The training started the next day. Braun taught her in the mornings. The training hall was carved into the rock at the base of the eastern tower. The floor was packed earth. The ceiling was high. The light came down through clerestory windows. Braun was a patient teacher. He was also a hard one. He did not praise her when she did a thing well. He did not scold her when she did a thing poorly. He told her what to do, watched her do it, told her what to do next. On the first morning, he taught her how to stand. On the second, he taught her how to fall. On the third, he taught her how to fall in a way that left her able to get back up. You are not training to win a fight, my lady. You are training to survive long enough for someone else to win it for you. That seems cowardly, it is. Cowardice is the right strategy for the woman a kingdom depends on. Heroes die first. Cowards write the books. She liked Bronn. She liked him more than she had expected. In the afternoons, her grandmother taught her. Alwyn had set up a study in a small room off the moon tower. The room had a long table. On the table were the green leather journals and the leather book she had brought down from her shawl pocket in the lavender. And 3 older books that had been shipped up that first night from somewhere Ira did not ask about. Her grandmother did not lecture. Her grandmother put a book in front of her and let her read. She learned things she would not have believed a week earlier. She learned that her line had not always been called Moon Blessed. That had been a name given by an old wolf named Owen Stormcloud more than 150 years ago because the older name was too dangerous to use in writing. She learned the older name. She did not say it out loud. Her grandmother told her not to. The older name had power in it. The older name would, if she said it correctly, light a candle from across a room. She learned that her people could walk on a moonbeam. She did not believe it. Her grandmother took her up to the top of the moon tower on the second night of the training, and she stood at the edge of the parapet. And her grandmother told her to step off. She stepped off. She did not fall. She walked. She walked 20 feet out into the air, over the courtyard of Nightbane on a slant of moonlight that her foot could feel under it like ice. She came back to the parapet shaking, and she sat down on the floor, and she laughed for the first time in a week. The laugh sounded strange. The laugh came up out of her like something that had been waiting for a door. She learned that she could see lies. She learned that when she was looking at a wolf who was speaking, and the wolf was lying, the air around the wolf's face shimmered slightly, like heat off a road. Her grandmother told her not to use this gift on people she loved. Her grandmother said the gift would not bring her closer to anyone. It would only show her where the floors were thin. She learned the names of 3 Moon Blessed who had been hidden. Her grandmother had a list. The list had been kept in code in the margins of a cookbook for 40 years. There was a woman named Lara who had been hiding in the Sawtooth Range in Idaho, a woman named Nix in northern Vermont, a girl named Celestia who was 19 and lived above a hardware store in the Ozarks. They had all heard the howl. They had all written back in a code Alwyn had taught their mothers to teach them. They were coming. They would meet her at the tribunal grounds. Each evening Torrin came to the moon tower. He did not come inside. He came to the bottom of the staircase. He waited. She walked down to meet him. They walked the walls of Nightbane together. The walls were 10 feet thick and 40 feet high, and they ran for half a mile around the eastern face of the fortress. The walk took an hour. They walked it every night. On the 4th night, he stopped at the southwest tower and turned to look at her. I have been thinking about what to call you. You have been calling me Aira, yes. But in public, the pack wants a name, a title, something to use in the writing. They have been asking, what have you told them? I told them I would ask you. She thought about it. The moon was waxing. It was 3 nights from full. The tribunal was set for the full moon. There were nights they had to get through. She said, call me Aira, until I have earned anything else. Then we will see what name fits the wolf I have become. He nodded. He did not press her further. He had a small velvet box in his coat pocket. She had seen the outline of it the past 2 nights and had pretended not to. She had assumed it was a ring. She had not been ready to talk about a ring. He did not bring it out. He said instead, I am not going to ask you tonight. I want you to know I have the question with me, so that when I do ask, it will not surprise you. I want you to know it is coming, because surprise is for other people. The 2 of us, I want there to be no surprise between us. Ever. About anything, she did not know what to say to that. She said, thank you, it was not enough. But he understood it. On the 6th night, she stood on the parapet of the moon tower, alone. After Torrin had gone to bed, she looked east. The wind that came up the valley smelled like snow that had not fallen yet. She thought about her mother. She thought about the woman she had spent 6 years hating. She tried to find the hate. She could not. The hate had gone the way ice goes off a window when the sun comes through it. What was left was something quieter. Something harder to carry because there was no one to give it to. Her mother was not here. Her mother could not hear her say she was sorry. There were no letters left to write. There was only the moon and the wind and the work that started tomorrow. She said, out loud to no one, I see you now, Mama. I see you. The wind did not answer. It did not need to. She went back inside. On the morning of the 7th day, they left for the tribunal grounds. The grounds were called Council Stone. They sat in the high desert of central Nevada, in a basin between 2 ranges that had no name on any modern map but had been the meeting place of the council for 270 years. The basin was a natural amphitheater of white limestone. It held about 4,000 wolves. The council had built 7 stone thrones into the cliff above the basin floor at the time of the founding. The thrones had not been moved since Torrhen's convoy was 7 vehicles long. They drove through the night and arrived at Council Stone in the gray hour before dawn on the 8th day. The basin was already filling. Era had not expected so many wolves. She had thought a few hundred. There were thousands. Delegations from every territory in the country. Riders who had come on horseback from packs that did not own cars. A whole contingent on motorcycles that had come up from a pack in West Texas. They had come because word had traveled. The council had not been able to keep the writ quiet. By the time the writ had been read, in 3 pack houses, in 5 different states, someone had told someone, and someone had called someone, and the wires had hummed. The wolves had come to see what the council would do. Torrhen walked Era to the center of the basin floor at sunrise. He stayed beside her. Bronn stood 3 paces back with 2 of Torrhen's scouts. Alwyn stood beside Era on her other side. 3 other wolves, 3 women Era had not yet met in this life, walked in across the limestone from 3 different directions and took up positions around her. Lara from Idaho, Nix from Vermont. Celestia, 19, the girl from the hardware store, who looked at Era and started to cry quietly without making a sound. Up on the cliff above them, the 7 thrones were occupied, 6 alphas and 1 empty seat. The empty seat was on the far left. Era understood without being told that the empty seat belonged to a wolf who had not yet arrived. The man in the center throne stood up. Alpha Magnus, 50-something. Silver hair to his collar. A face that had been carved by money, and by getting what he wanted for so long, that getting what he wanted had become a kind of muscle. His voice carried, Era Moonshadow of Shadowmere. You have been called before the council to submit to the verification rite. Step forward and present yourself. Era stepped forward. She was not afraid. She had been afraid for 21 years, and she had used up her fear. What was left in her chest now was a kind of clarity. Like clean water in a bowl, she said, I am here. I deny the council's authority to verify anything about me. I am here because if I had not come, you would have hunted me. You have done it before. To my mother's sisters, to my grandmother's sisters, to a girl named Hannah in 1947 and a girl named Ruth in 1962. The list is longer than I have time to read out loud, but the list exists, and I have it. And I am willing to read it into the record of this council right now. Magnus's face did not change. But the alpha to his right shifted very slightly in his throne. Magnus said, You will submit to verification, she said. I will not. Then under the writ, you are declared rogue. Then under my own writ, older than yours, I challenge you for your seat. The basin went silent in the way that only 4,000 wolves can go silent at the same time. Magnus laughed once. Sharp. It was a bad laugh. The laugh of a man who had not been told no in a long time. You are not an alpha. You have no standing to challenge, by the law you just invoked. The law of 1793. A moon-blessed wolf holds standing equal to any alpha. You either accept the law in full, or you accept that you have been making it up as you go. His mouth thinned. He did not have a good answer. He had not expected her to know the law. He had expected a frightened girl who would shift and be measured and be assigned a guardian. He had expected to take her home in a car of his own choosing. He nodded. Once, I accept. The basin opened around them. The fight did not last long. He shifted first. He was a large wolf, scarred, the color of old iron, the kind of wolf who had won 100 fights and had stopped counting at 50. She did not shift right away. She walked the perimeter of the cleared ground in her human form. She let him watch her. She let him decide that she was wasting his time. When she shifted slowly. Each shift she had done in the last week had taken less of her than the one before. This one took almost nothing. She came down on 4 paws in the limestone dust, and the morning sun caught her crystalline coat and threw 100 small rainbows across the cliff face above them. The wolves in the basin made a sound, a collective sound. Not a cheer, a breath. Magnus charged. She let him pass through her. He went through her like he had gone through a stretch of cold air. He stumbled on the other side. He turned. He charged again. She let him through again. The 3rd time, she did not let him through. She stepped sideways. He shot past her shoulder. He skidded on the limestone. He came up snarling. The 4th time he did not charge. He stopped. He looked at her. He had figured out he could not touch her. He had figured out he could not win. The fight had been over since the first pass. The basin understood it. Magnus understood it. She walked toward him. He did not move. He could not. Her presence at the speed she was moving had a weight to it that locked his paws. She put one paw on his forehead. The vision came up from him the way water comes up from a spring. She did not pull it out. She invited it. The council's law, she had learned in her grandmother's small study, included a clause that said an alpha who accepted a moon-blessed challenge could have his truths laid bare to the witnessing wolves. The clause had not been invoked in 200 years. The clause was still there. The basin saw what she saw. A girl named Sarai, 20 years old, a small farmhouse in northern Wyoming, autumn of 2016. What Magnus had taken from her against her will, the look on her face the morning after. The decision he had made that same morning to silence her with his own hands rather than risk a witness. The shallow grave in the woods behind the farmhouse that nobody had ever come looking for. A ledger came up next. $500,000 from one alpha, $1 million from another. A wire transfer from a pack in the Pacific Northwest in exchange for a bent verdict in a border case. A meeting in a hotel room in Reno 14 years earlier. Magnus across the table from a man in a long black coat. The man's face was not visible. The man's voice was. The man's voice said, "When the next moon-blessed wakes, you will deliver her to me." Magnus said, agreed. The basin had gone very still. Ira lifted her paw from his head. She shifted back. She stood in front of him in the limestone dust in her mother's blue dress, and she said, loud enough for the entire basin to hear, "That last one is the part I want you to remember. Because Alpha Magnus has just shown all of us that 14 years ago, he promised a man he could not name that he would hand over the next moon-blessed who woke. He has been waiting for me. He has been planning for me. And the writ he served on me last week was not his idea. The writ came from the man in the long black coat. The man in the long black coat is coming, and he is coming for all of us. Not just for me." Magnus shifted back. He was on his knees. He did not get up. She turned to the cliff, the 6 other alphas in their thrones, to the 4,000 wolves in the basin. "I do not want his seat. I do not want any seat. Strip him of his ranking. Send him into exile. Put a wolf in his place who has not yet learned to take money." The alpha to Magnus's right stood up. A woman. Maybe 40. Era learned her name later, Sayla of the Greywater Pack. The woman had been watching the whole thing without speaking. The woman had been the one to shift slightly when Era read the list. Sayla said, "Seconded. By voice vote. All in favor of stripping Alpha Magnus of rank and seat." 5 other voices. Aye. Magnus did not stand up. He was led off the basin floor by 2 of his own enforcers. The enforcers did not look him in the face. Word had already traveled past the basin and out into the parking lots. By the end of the day, his pack would not have him back. Sayla addressed the basin. "There is a larger question now. The man in the long black coat, the promise made in Reno. We need to talk about this now." "Before we go home," a voice came out of the crowd. "Nix. The moon-blessed from Vermont." She had stepped forward without permission. She did not need permission anymore. "I have seen him, in dreams, for 10 years. I did not know what he was. I do now. His name in the old language is the one that means hollow. He was a wolf once, 3,000 years ago, in a place that is not in any of your books. He refused the moon. He found a way to live longer by drinking the lives of other wolves. He was bound by moon-blessed wolves 1,000 years ago, and the binding has held. The binding has been breaking for 40 years. When Era's howl went up last week, the binding cracked. He is awake." Sayla's face had gone the color of bone. "How far away?" Celestia spoke. She was 19. Her voice was thin. It carried anyway. 3 pack houses in eastern Tennessee went silent 2 nights ago. Not destroyed. Empty. "The wolves are gone. There are burn marks on the ground in the shape of wolves with their heads thrown back." The basin was quiet. Era said, "He is coming north. He will reach Council Stone in about 11 days. We need to choose the ground before he chooses it for us. There is a place near the Wyoming border called the Old Battleground. The first moon-blessed wolves stood there. The ley lines are strong. If we are going to face him, we face him there." Sayla nodded once. "Ride home tonight. Every alpha in this basin. Gather every wolf who will come. Meet at the Old Battleground in 9 days. We will hold the line together." There was no vote on that. There did not need to be. The wolves came. Not all of them, 3,000 of them. Era had thought it would be fewer. She had thought 1,000. 3,000 came, from Maine, from the Florida Panhandle. From a pack on the Olympic Peninsula she had not yet had a chance to think about. A delegation came on horseback from Wyoming, and another came on motorcycle from the Texas Hill Country. Even a small group came up from a pack in New Mexico that had not sent a delegation to anything in 50 years. The Old Battleground sat in a basin much like Council Stone, but rougher. The grass was bunch grass and sage. The wind smelled like winter coming. Cook fires went up at dusk on the night before the battle. Tents went up around the cook fires, wolves in their forms and out of them. Children playing where children should not have been allowed to play. Era looked at the children and looked away. She did not want to think about the children. She would have to. She walked the camp with Torin that night. They did not speak much. They did not need to. They stopped at the edge of the camp where the last cook fire ended and the dark began. The moon was 3 nights past full. It was still bright enough to see by. Torin took her hand. He turned her to face him. He pulled the velvet box out of his coat pocket. He held it up between them. He did not open it yet. He said, "I told you I would not surprise you. I am asking you tonight. I am asking you now, because if it goes badly tomorrow, I do not want to die without you having known the question. I want you to have the answer in your mouth, whether you say it out loud or not." She put her hand on top of his on the box. She did not open it either. "Ask me, will you marry me? Not as the Alpha King and the Moonblessed, as Torin and Era, in a small room, with your grandmother, with my mother, if she will come, in a year. After we have lived a year together, after you have made up your own mind about whether I am a man worth a year," she breathed out. The breath came out longer than she had expected. She nodded. She found the word. "Yes." He opened the box. Inside was not a ring. Inside was a key. It was old. It was iron. It was the key to a library his great-great-grandmother had started, and his great-grandfather had locked and nobody had opened since. He said, "The library is yours. Whatever else we build together, that comes with it. A ring can wait. The library is the part I wanted you to have first." She closed her hand around the key. The metal was cold and surprisingly heavy. She put the key into the inside pocket of the wool jacket Braun had given her that morning. She kept her hand there for a long moment, on the metal against her ribs. They walked back to the tent together. In the morning, the Hollow Ones came over the eastern ridge. There were 10,000 of them. Or close to it. They did not move like wolves. They moved like puppets, with the strings invisible. The sound they made was the sound a body makes when there is nothing inside of it. At the front of them walked a thing that had once been a wolf. He was not a wolf now. He was a shadow in the shape of a wolf. He was, somehow, also a man. His outline shifted as he moved. Era's eyes could not stay on him for long. The 12 Moonblessed stood at the center of the human ranks. Era at the head, Lara, Nyx, Celestia at her shoulders. 8 more who had answered the howl over the past week, and had come in by truck and bus, and one of them on foot. They formed a ring. They howled together. The moon was not in the sky. The moon was on the other side of the earth. The moon came out anyway. It came out at mid-morning, faint at first, then bright, then very bright. It came out the way a thing comes out when 12 voices that have not been heard together in 300 years call it. The light came down through the 12 of them, like light coming through a glass. The Hollow Ones touched the light, and they unmade. Not violently. They unmade the way fog unmakes when the sun comes through it. The shapes that had been them lay in the grass, and then the shapes were not there. The shadow in the shape of a wolf kept coming. The light did not unmake him. He had been making lies for too long. The lies were thick around him like a coat. He came for Era. Torin met him first. Torin had shifted at the start of the howl. Torin went at him low and at the throat. The shadow swatted him aside, the way a man swats a curtain. Torin hit the ground 20 feet away and did not get up. Era did not look at him. She knew he was alive. She could feel him alive through whatever the mate bond was now becoming. She did not look at him, because looking at him would have moved her, and she could not afford to move. The shadow reached her. He raised one shadow paw to take her face. He spoke in a voice that did not come from a mouth. The voice came from inside her own head the way a thought comes. "Your light. Give it to me," she said. "Take it." He did. He tried. The light Moonblessed carried was not a power that could be taken. It was a kind of truth the world used to tell itself. The Hollow King had spent 3,000 years telling the world the opposite of every true thing. He drank her light. The light, when it went into him, met every lie he had ever told, every name he had stolen, every wolf he had eaten. The lies caught fire. He could not put the fire out. The fire was not made of heat. The fire was made of all the names of all the wolves he had taken, returning to themselves at once inside of him. He came apart. He came apart slowly, like a thing being unwound. The shape of him dissolved into a long column of pale light that rose up out of the basin and broke into pieces, and the pieces went up into the sky in the direction of the moon. The Hollow Ones in the field went down all at once. They lay in the dust and they did not get up. The battle ended that fast. The basin was quiet for a long moment. Then Torin sat up where he had landed. Then he stood up. Then he walked across the limestone toward her. She was already coming to him. They met in the middle. She did not say anything. He did not say anything. He put one hand on the back of her neck and rested his forehead against hers, and they stood like that for a long time, while the basin around them slowly understood that the worst thing had not happened today. The wolves did not all leave at once. They could not. There were wounded. There were dead. The dead were not many, but they were enough. The Florida pack had lost 2. The Texas Riders had lost 1. A young beta from the New Mexico delegation had been crushed in the first charge before the Moon Blessed had finished the ring. There were 3 of them laid out on the limestone under wool blankets when the sun set. Era sat with them through the night. She did not know any of them. She sat anyway. Her grandmother sat with her for the first 3 hours and then went to sleep in the tent. Torin sat with her for the rest. He did not try to make her talk. He did not try to take her away. He sat the way a man sits when he understands that some of being a king is just sitting. In the morning, she helped wrap the bodies. The Texas Riders took theirs east. The Florida pack took theirs south. The young beta's pack had not been able to come. She had been an orphan in life. The New Mexico delegation took her with them to be buried in her grandmother's plot. Her grandmother had been alive that morning. She would not be by sunset. The convoy back to Nightbane took 3 days again. This time, on the second day, Torin asked Bronn to pull over at the overlook in the Bitterroot. He did not have to say which one. Bronn knew. The car stopped. Torin and Era got out. They walked to the railing. The wind was the same. The valley below was a deeper copper now. Because winter was closer, Torin did not say anything. Era said, after a while, "You said you would stop here." "After everything." "I said I would stop here. I did not promise everything would be over by then." "Is it over?" "Some of it. Not all of it. There will be other Hollow Kings, there always are. They wear different faces. The faces are not always shadow. Sometimes the faces are very ordinary. Sometimes the faces sit on council thrones. Sometimes the faces sit at dinner tables and call their daughters broken." She looked at him. "Are you trying to warn me about the next 30 years? I am trying to tell you that I will be standing here with you for them?" She did not answer that out loud. She put her hand into his coat pocket and found the key she had given back to him for safekeeping during the battle. She closed her hand around it. She squeezed once. They got back in the car. When they reached Nightbane, the gates were open. There was no crowd this time. Torin had asked Bronn to send word ahead that the Queen was tired and did not want to be welcomed. The courtyard was quiet. The waterfall ran. The afternoon sun came in through the high windows and made long bars of gold on the obsidian. She did not go to the moon tower. She went to Torin's tower instead. He did not say anything about it. He did not press the door open. He waited at the threshold until she nodded. Then he came in. He sat in a chair by the window. She sat on the edge of the bed. "I think I would like to learn how to read my mother's journals tomorrow." "All right, and the day after, I think I would like to write a letter to Hannah's family. The Hannah from 1947. There may still be one of her sisters alive somewhere. I want to find out." "All right, and after that, I think I would like to invite my sister Aurora to come and see this place. I have not spoken to her in 3 years. I do not know if she will come, but I would like to ask her." "All right." She was quiet for a while. "I do not know if I am going to be a good queen, Torin. You will not be. Not for a year, maybe 2. Then you will be. How do you know? Because you are already doing the work. The being good comes after the work," she nodded. She lay down on her side on top of the covers. He did not move from the chair. After a while, she said, with her eyes closed, "Tell me a story about your mother. Something small. Something from when you were a child." "Before any of it went wrong," he told her. About a Christmas tree that had fallen over twice in one morning. About a dog who would not stop stealing biscuits off the counter. About a song his mother had sung in the kitchen that he could not remember the words to anymore, only the sound of her voice when she sang it. Era fell asleep before he finished. He stopped talking. He did not move from the chair. He sat there until morning, watching her breathe. The way a man watches a thing he has spent his whole life looking for and has finally found. Friend. I have been telling you stories on this channel for a long time now. You have sat with me through a lot of nights. You have heard me talk about a lot of fathers and a lot of sons and a lot of brothers. I have tried, every time, to find the one true thing in the story and lay it on the table where we could both see it. The true thing in this story is not the girl. It is not the king. It is the mother. Mayella Moonshadow made a choice, when her daughter was a small child, that very few mothers ever have to make. She knew what her daughter was. She knew what the world did to women like her daughter. She had a list of names in her own head of cousins and aunts and friends who had been taken in the night by men in long coats and never heard from again. She knew that the same men were watching her own house. She knew that if her child grew up strong, the child would not grow up at all, so she made the child seem weak. She did not do it with a lie someone could check on. She did not do it with a pill. She did it with her own body. She put her own life around the cage that held her daughter's true self, and she pressed down on the lid until her body could not press down anymore. She did this for a year, maybe more. The whole time she watched her daughter look at her, with confusion, with hurt, with the early shape of the resentment that would later become hate. She watched her daughter believe that her mother was weak, that her mother had given up, that her mother was dying because her mother was ashamed of her. She let her daughter believe that. She had to. Because if her daughter had known the truth, her daughter would have tried to stop her, and her daughter could not be allowed to stop her. Because the alternative was a black car coming up the drive when her daughter was 8 years old, and a man getting out, and her daughter never coming home again. So Mayla held the lid down, and she died. And her daughter, the child she was holding the lid down for, spent 6 years afterward thinking her mother had died of shame. There is a kind of love, friend, that does not get told to the person it is for. There is a kind of love that works in the dark and does not put its name on the door. Most of us, sitting here tonight, have been on the receiving end of love like that at some point in our lives. We just did not know it at the time. It might have been the father who took the second job in the winter when you were 10 and never explained what the second job was for. You thought he was just tired. You did not know he was sending money to the orthodontist so that you would not be the kid in school with the bad teeth. It might have been the grandmother who stayed quiet about something your uncle did because she had done the math and decided that telling you would cost you more than not telling you. You called her cold for years. She let you. It might have been the man in your hometown who let you walk away when you were 22. The one you thought did not love you enough to fight for you. The truth was the opposite. The truth was that he loved you enough to see what staying with him was going to cost you, and he loved you enough to let you go. He never told you that. He let you tell the story your way. I am 64 years old, friend. I have been on the receiving end of love like that more times than I can count. I did not figure most of it out until it was too late to thank the people who gave it to me. My own mother died 11 years ago this November. She had been doing things for me my whole life that I did not understand until I went through her papers after the funeral. There was a letter in her sock drawer from a doctor in 1976. I will not tell you what was in it. I will tell you that it explained 8 years of my childhood I had spent being angry at her for. I sat on the floor of her bedroom and I read that letter 3 times. And then I wept, friend. I wept the way a grown man weeps when he understands he has spent 30 years being wrong about the most important person in his life. I tell you the story of Era tonight because I want you to do something easier than what I had to do. I want you to do it while the people in question are still here. I want you to think, tonight, about the one person in your life who paid a price for you that you did not understand at the time. The one whose name comes up in your head right now without you trying. You know which name I am talking about. You felt it 3 paragraphs ago. If that person is still alive, send them a note. Pick up the phone. Drive over. Say the thing you have not said. The note does not have to be long. The phone call does not have to be long. Just tell them you see it now. Tell them you see what they did. They have probably been waiting 40 years to hear that. Some of them die without ever hearing it. Most of them, friend. Most of them die without ever hearing it. If that person is gone already, then say it out loud anyway. In the kitchen, in the car, at the cemetery, if they are buried close enough that you can get to them. The dead cannot read the note. They cannot hear the phone call. But you can. And it turns out that saying the thing out loud, even when the person is past hearing it, does something to the saying. It moves the stuck thing. It lets the grief settle into the place it should have been all along. That is what Era did, on the parapet of the moon tower, on the night before she rode out to Council Stone. She said it out loud. She said, "I see you now, Mama." The wind did not answer her. The wind did not need to. The saying was the thing. I want to hear from you tonight, friend, in the comments. 1 sentence is enough. Who is the person in your life who paid a price for you that you only understood much later? Just the name, or the relationship, or the thing they did. I read every comment that comes in on this channel. I read them with coffee in the morning. I read them slowly. If you put a name down there tonight, I will see it. And if this story stayed with you, if anything in it sat in your chest, the way a hand sits on a shoulder, send it to the person in your family who needs to hear it. There is always somebody. There is always somebody in every family who has been called broken for too long. Sometimes that person is a son. Sometimes that person is a granddaughter. Sometimes, friend, that person is the man in the mirror. Sometimes that man is you. You were never broken. You were hidden by somebody who loved you enough to do it in the dark. Good night, friend. Sleep well. I will be here next week.